You're feeling good, weights are moving easy, and you think you're Superman smashing your workout. This is one of the best feelings in the world and is a high that many gym goers are chasing during their workouts. But while you may feel great in the gym, as your body begins to cool down afterwards, your muscles begin to tighten up, and your joints may start to get a little achy. And let's not even talk about waking up in the morning. A common way to ease this pain is to head to the kitchen cabinet, grab a bottle of ibuprofen, and pop a couple pills. There's no problem with getting a little pain relief to help you through your day. Right? Not exactly. If you have been taking painkillers to help you get through your workouts, you need to watch this video. We'll break down what it actually does to your muscles. Are you essentially trading your muscle gains for some relief? And stick around as we'll lay out some better ways to help relieve some pain that won't affect your muscle growth. Over-the-counter painkillers are a common tool used by lifters to deal with some of the aches and pains from lifting to allow them to continue training. There are two common types used. The first are categorized as NSAIDs, which stands for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Probably the most popular is ibuprofen. Here's how they work. Upon your muscle tissue being damaged, they produce a type of lipid compound called prostaglandins. These prostaglandins are released into the blood where they trigger an inflammatory response leading to tissue swelling, pain, and in some cases fever. These prostaglandins are regulated by COX enzymes. Taking NSAIDs will block the two types of COX enzymes, which essentially reduces the inflammation and fever. The other common type is the compound acetaminophen, with Tylenol being the most well-known brand. Acetaminophen is an analgesic and simply works by reducing body temperature and helps to relieve pain. With this in mind, we will primarily be looking at NSAIDs. Even though many people may take acetaminophen for muscle soreness, it's actually not going to really do anything to relieve pain. Acetaminophen primarily works by reducing temperature and headaches, but doesn't reduce inflammation, which is the primary cause of soreness brought about by exercise. At the same time, it can disrupt your body's thermoregulation, which isn't a good thing and could result in some issues. Regardless, while some studies will include acetaminophen use, our main interest are NSAIDs. With that said, keep these mechanisms in the back of your head as we're now going to go through some research on what happens when a person takes painkillers with their workouts. Then after, we're going to build a bridge between the mechanisms of painkillers and the results to build a full picture of why they do or don't help you. For muscle growth to occur, there isn't just one mechanism that controls its success. For example, to gain weight, you simply need to eat more calories. That's that. However, to build muscle, you also need to eat a surplus of calories, but that's just one aspect. You also need to train, but not just train, you need to lift more weight than you did the week before. In addition, your diet can affect muscle growth. For example, low-carb diets have been found to be suboptimal for muscle growth. Oh yeah, your hormones are also going to affect your muscle growth as well. These are just a few things that need to go right, but the primary mechanism that needs to occur is an increase in muscle protein synthesis. Unfortunately, there's a good chance that taking painkillers is going to blunt this process, resulting in less muscle growth. A study from 2002 looked at the use of both acetaminophen and ibuprofen on their effects on muscle protein synthesis. To do this, 24 males were involved in high-intensity eccentric exercise, performing 10 to 14 sets of 10 reps targeting the knee extensors. These 24 men were placed into one of three groups: 1,200 milligrams of ibuprofen, 4,000 milligrams of acetaminophen, and a placebo. In the placebo group, muscle protein synthesis was increased by 76%, while both painkillers groups saw no increase. You might think that no increase isn't all that bad because heck, at least it didn't decrease. But that's not how muscle protein synthesis works. Let's break down this process in more detail so you have a better idea as to why this isn't good for muscle growth. Muscle growth occurs depending on the relationship of muscle protein synthesis and another reaction known as muscle protein breakdown. Muscle protein synthesis is the building of muscle, while muscle protein breakdown is just that, the breakdown of muscle. Both of these reactions are always working. So if muscle protein synthesis is higher, the muscle will grow. If muscle protein breakdown is higher, the muscle will break down. Going back to this study, one of the ways that resistance training works is by increasing muscle protein synthesis. As we saw, when there were no painkillers involved, it increased by 76%. However, when painkillers were thrown into the equation, there was no increase. So while it didn't cause a decrease, it prevented any increase from happening, which mitigated the potential for muscle growth. In fact, this could even put you at more of a risk of losing muscle if muscle protein breakdown were to rise. So this study looks like a shut and closed case, but not so fast. Let's look at another study that will turn this study on its head and cause some confusion along the way. In 2011, there was a follow-up study using a very similar design. 36 older adults around 65 years of age participated in a 12-week progressive overload program aimed at increasing knee extension strength. These individuals were then separated into one of three groups: an ibuprofen group, an acetaminophen group, and a placebo group. Following the completion of this study, something very strange was discovered. Unlike the previous study, all of the groups saw an increase in muscle mass of the quadriceps. But wait, it gets a little crazier. In this study, both of the drug groups saw greater growth than the placebo. To be clear, taking either ibuprofen or acetaminophen resulted in a greater amount of growth than not taking anything. This means they provided an ergogenic benefit. In addition, all groups increased muscle strength that was in proportion to the increase in size, which hints that the muscle gained was actual functional muscle. Researchers note that this growth was exceptional and that the drug groups basically reversed 10 years of muscle loss from sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is the natural process of muscle loss that occurs as we get older. Being able to reverse 10 years is huge. Now, if anything, we have two studies that suggest two very different outcomes, making it impossible to come to a final assessment. The one glaring difference is the age of the participants. The younger lifters seem to experience a negative effect, and the older lifters seem to see a benefit. Well, good thing there's more studies to examine. In 2017, a large meta was conducted that included 42 different studies. Most of these studies used injuries from eccentric muscle damage, while there were other causes of injury such as acute strain or running downhill. Further, a wide variety of various NSAIDs were used, indicating this was not isolated to a single brand. The researchers found a generally positive benefit of using NSAIDs to help improve recovery. But that's not the only big review. And to make things more complicated, other reviews have come to very different assessments. A large review from 2023 examined all of the available research on using NSAIDs to treat and reduce post-training soreness. They found out that the best thing you could hope for is no effect on muscle hypertrophy. Keep in mind, for this to happen, you should stick to a lower dose. However, higher doses in fact do have a negative effect on muscle growth and can even slow recovery. But wait, there's yet another big review, and this one is going to change everything we know. Actually, no, it won't. It says the same thing as the previous review. This large review from 2023 was performed to examine the effect that NSAIDs have on muscle recovery, muscle strength, and muscle damage at 24 and 48 hours post-exercise. And well, the results aren't great. We'll let you hear it straight from the horse's mouth. The data of the present meta-analysis indicate that NSAID use is ineffective in improving resistance performance and muscle strength, as well as exercise recovery. The present data supports that consumption of analgesic drugs as an endurance performance enhancer or as a muscle anabolic must not be recommended. So the differences in these studies was that one was looking at actual muscle growth and strength increase, while other markers examined were measuring the effect on muscle damage. What this suggests is that taking an NSAID may be beneficial at reducing pain, but will have no benefit towards increasing muscle mass and muscle strength, and could possibly even cause a decrease. So you're probably wondering why this is. Exactly how NSAIDs decrease inflammation, but at the same time decrease muscle growth and muscle strength. The first thing to keep in mind is that NSAIDs ultimately reduce inflammation by preventing the production of prostaglandins. This decrease in inflammation will in turn lessen discomfort. The problem is that inflammation actually plays a role in muscle growth and muscle repair. A paper published in 2022 titled "Role of Macrophages During Skeletal Muscle Regeneration and Hypertrophy: Implications for Immunomodulatory Strategies" details this relationship. What's interesting is this paper not only notes the role that NSAIDs play in mitigating muscle hypertrophy by preventing inflammation, but it points out that this is the same thing that happens with another very popular recovery method: ice baths. Yes, ice baths have also been found to blunt muscle growth. But a decrease in inflammation isn't the only mechanism which disrupts muscle growth. At the same time, NSAIDs are known to reduce the production of muscle signaling molecules known as myokines, which also plays a role in muscle hypertrophy. And we shouldn't forget the potential for decreasing muscle protein synthesis. Remember at the beginning of this video where we told you that there are a lot of things that must occur for muscle to grow, and NSAIDs seem to disrupt more than one? When all of these different mechanisms are affected negatively, it makes more sense that muscle growth isn't going to occur. This confusion comes from the misunderstanding of how muscle growth occurs. As we said, we see a similar issue with ice baths. Trainees will just figure that since they trained hard, their muscles will surely grow. Therefore, as no one likes to walk around with discomfort, they pop some pills as they let their muscles grow free from pain. Or so they think. They don't understand that these are interlinked. Unfortunately, they are. So decreasing discomfort by decreasing inflammation could in turn be decreasing improvements in muscle growth or muscle strength. But what to do about the pain? Don't worry, in just a little bit, we'll tell you how you can take NSAIDs while mitigating your chances of negative side effects. In addition, we'll give you some other options to mitigate discomfort during this video. But first, there's also another class of painkillers we need to discuss, ones that are a step above over-the-counter painkillers. We're talking about opioids. Of all the drugs in the world that have caused destruction in our country, perhaps there's not greater than that of painkillers, technically known as opiates. What were once prescribed to help people from pain they received from injuries or surgeries have quickly become one of the most popular recreational drugs in the world. However, unlike marijuana, which is relatively safe in terms of causing serious side effects or death, opiates aren't. Unlike NSAIDs, opioids work by blocking pain signaling in the central nervous system. At the same time, it floods your body with dopamine, one of your feel-good chemicals. Combined, these reduce your perception of pain and make you feel good rather than decrease your inflammation. Unfortunately, there's not much information on opioids use and muscle growth, which is odd as their use is so common. After researching this topic, it seems the primary area of research is the use of opioids with anabolic steroids. More specifically, there seems to be a connection in which steroid use can increase the chance of opioid addiction. Regardless, since opioids aren't affecting inflammation, there's likely a small chance that they'll have effects worse than NSAIDs on muscle growth, at least directly. However, they can definitely cause you to become drowsy and affect your energy levels, which would definitely increase your chance of performing less total work. Now, all of this is ignoring the fact that they are highly addictive. Regardless of their effect on muscle growth, using opioids should not be a legitimate option if you feel sore. If you are so sore that you need such a strong painkiller, you probably have a more serious injury. With the high chance of developing an addiction, opioids are a very dangerous drug to use recreationally for simple discomfort such as DOMS. While we're on this topic, it's time to speak about the issue that looms over this entire topic. We need to address why you feel you need to use painkillers in the first place. Sure, there are those times when training gets a little more intense or you're just having a great day and push it harder than normal. However, being so sore that you need to take painkillers every day points to an issue with your training. Let's remember that strength training should make us feel better, not worse. Why work out and strengthen our body if we're just going to tear our bodies down and hobble around all day? No thanks. We understand that there are rare occasions that you may have trained a bit harder than normal and may wake up a little sore. However, this should be on a rare occasion. The good news is that on a rare occasion, taking an NSAID isn't going to have a massive effect on overall muscle growth. This is especially true if you take a lower dose. Taking minimum doses of NSAIDs are going to mitigate any possible negative effect. But wait, there's more. We're not just going to leave you hanging with that. Rather, we want to leave you some tips that you can apply to yourself right now. So if NSAIDs can possibly blunt your muscle growth, what's a better way to mitigate pain and discomfort after training? Well, ice baths are often recommended, and while they can improve recovery, we already discussed that they produce similar issues as NSAIDs. So those are a no-go if you're increasing muscle growth. Therefore, as far as what you can do post-exercise, we believe that light cardio as a form of active recovery is your best bet. By light cardio, we simply mean going for a brisk walk or simple bicycle ride. Staying active seems to be the best overall method to reduce soreness, plus it lets you get in your 10,000 steps. Start trying to increase your daily activity post-exercise. This can be a short 15-minute walk immediately post-exercise, and then another light session later on during the day, depending on what time you work out. This later session can be longer, 30 to 60 minutes depending on your free time. But again, as we just mentioned, you shouldn't be experiencing a significant amount of soreness on a consistent basis. The best way to do this is to make appropriate increases with your progressive overload. For those unaware, progressive overload is the lifting principle, which simply states that in order to continually progress, you need to continually place a stressor of slightly greater magnitude on the muscle over time. Basically, do a little bit more work every week. Oftentimes, guys will go to the gym and train hard with no real goals and just lift weight until they can't lift anymore. While this is fun once in a while, doing this all the time is too much. Muscle growth occurs through a cycle of stressing a muscle and letting it recover. For this to happen, all you need to do is place a slightly greater amount of work on it when you get in the gym and then go home. That's it. Staying in the gym and beating up your muscle will do nothing but break it down more. If you keep this up, muscles can have trouble fully recovering, resulting in acute soreness as well as chronic overuse injuries. The main point is you don't need to destroy your body every workout session. All you need to do is apply some simple progressive overload protocols to your training, and your need to take painkillers after your workout won't even be a thing anymore. The exact protocol can vary widely. However, some general guidelines are to add 5 to 10 pounds to your lower body exercises per session and 1 to 5 pounds to your upper body workouts. Another option is to add reps. Instead of adding more weight, you just perform 1 or 2 more reps. The main goal is to put a little bit more work on the muscle and call it a day. Do this and your need for NSAIDs will almost disappear. Now, if you are taking NSAIDs for other issues, you basically want to use a lower dose. The exact amount can vary widely depending on what painkiller you are taking, but don't use the maximum dose if you are wanting to maximize your muscle growth.